wanted to bring in Dr. Mina Mirholm. He's Associate Professor of Psychiatry at Columbia University Medical Center. And Dr. Mina Mirholm, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. Always a pleasure.
When we hear about these types of incidents, you hear about them and it's not somebody getting robbed or somebody resisting a robbery or somebody defending somebody else. These are very vicious, very angry type, extremely angry types of attacks. What do you see going on here?
A few things, Lisa. One of the major things that we see is access to a weapon. As you mentioned in these examples, when somebody is driving around with a meat cleaver, a bat, a gun, other kinds of weapons, what happens is in that moment when the rage begins to escalate, the part of your brain that is the brakes essentially for your behavior takes a back seat and the emotion takes over. Now, in that moment of emotion, you will sort of reach for whatever's around you. If you don't have something around you, you might reach for a gesture, you might reach for a rude word, but you might not reach for a weapon. So the first problem that we're seeing is folks who are walking around with things that can hurt people.
And are we as a society losing more patience? Because you'll see people. I mean, I drive. I'm a driver. I'm driving every single day, and people, they'll cut in front very, very fast, or they'll jump the light before it turns green, and then cut in front of all the other cars. They'll do things like that. They'll pass. They'll weave. All of these types of things. Do you think we're becoming more aggressive behind the wheel as a society?
There's certainly data to support that. Some data is saying that many of us have actually experienced some level of road rage, whether that's just a gesture or a word or some kind of conduct. 4 out of 5 drivers report having some kind of incident like this. And what we're seeing is the pressure and the anxiety and the anger doesn't begin at the wheel. It just kind of manifests itself that way. Driving around New York City can be stressful for many reasons because of where we are with prices and tolls and congestion and the like. The thing that we want to take a step back here and say, am I personally responding to the moment or responding to something that's happening around me, and how I can protect myself from reacting in a way that I'm going to oftentimes regret.
And then in terms of managing anger for people, managing their frustration or whatever, it's like I know when I'm driving and then it'll just be like completely jammed, completely gridlocked. The phone is ringing, the messages are coming in, and we're just like not getting anywhere, and we're trying to get to a story or get someplace to to do our job and do work. And then I'll just be like, okay, I'm putting the music on. There's nothing else I can do. Handle everything I can possibly handle, but are there coping mechanisms? Because there's a lot of other I mean, we're talking about the most extreme cases, but there have to be a lot of other drivers that, between the rising gas prices, between, the traffic, the weather delays, a lot of things that you just don't expect that can happen. There's no such thing as a predictable commute anymore, a predictable ride in the car. Are there certain things that we can all be doing to kind of, stay a little bit more even keeled when we're behind the wheel?
There certainly are, Lisa, and you named a few in a really good direction. The first is to be able to actually identify your emotion, to be able to say, okay, you know what? Now I am really frustrated. And to know, as you're mentioning, I'm frustrated for good reason. I wanted to be able to get to where I am and I'm late. I want to be able to afford my daily lifestyle and having a hard time with it. So first, being able to name the problem, name your emotion. And then when you have that, you take a sort of a step back that you're able to see what's happening around you. Secondly, is when you go to some of the examples that you went to, what helps me cope in the moment? Is it a phone call with a friend? Is it some music? Is it a change in temperature? For many folks who are stuck in a car, in a road race situation, where your body is. We just celebrated the New York Knicks celebrating a championship. One of the things that made them great is knowing when to call a timeout. For us, emotionally, calling a timeout is really key so that you don't let the feeling dictate your behavior. And that timeout can be the difference maker between overreacting to something versus being able to take a step back and say, what's the rational move that it is in my control right now, that I can take a step forward and not just react to the moment in a way that's going to backfire for me.
And then people that react in these quote unquote, road rage or these acts of rage, have they been violent all along? Have they been violent prone? Is there an escalation escalation chart or something with them? Help us understand that.
Absolutely. There's actually a combination here. One thing I'd want to really highlight, especially for young men who experience these fits of rage or anger, is oftentimes beneath the anger is sadness. So undiagnosed depression in men oftentimes will manifest as just rage, anger, and outbursts like this. So that's one thing you want to be thinking about. If
Wow.
I'm somebody who's hearing about these incidents and saying, I sometimes lose my cool, lose my temper, you might find that there's an untreated, undiagnosed situation that you can take care of before it sort of takes care of you. Secondly, there are patterns. If I'm starting to see little bits of patterns of escalation at work, in my relationships with my loved ones, again, that's a warning sign. That's a big red flashing sign to say, let me get ahead of this. Let me see, can I see first emotional regulation patterns? Can I see ways that I can calm myself down? For some folks, we may need medication on board. We may need therapy to be able to help me see who I really am, to be able to look in the mirror that way. Because these patterns oftentimes are only identified when it's too late versus when we were able to prevent a lot of this. And one of the jobs that we have as friends and loved ones and colleagues to be able to say, hey, I noticed that sometimes you get a bit frustrated. This really helped me deal with my frustration, being able to talk to someone, being able to get evaluated. So that's something that we can all do to help each other.
All right. And let me ask you about one other thing, just in terms, we had a very disturbing case over the weekend, the 12-year-old boy who was shot and killed broad daylight, late afternoon, Saturday, beautiful summer day, going to buy a ball to play ball with. And this is one trend that we have seen. We just spoke with Ralph Salento, former NYPD Lieutenant Commander of Detectives, and it's something that I've seen in my reporting of crime and of the violence, is that whereas before a lot of the most dangerous things were in the late night or early morning hours in isolated places away from where there were other people or civilians or people not involved in whatever the criminal activity was or the crime. And then now we just are seeing so much more of this unfolding like this in broad daylight when there are people around. Is that a different type of anger for people that are choosing to just let it all out in front of other people in broad daylight, as opposed to somebody trying to do it and, oh, I'm going to get this guy who I hate or whatever, or the ops or the enemy, but I don't want to hurt any innocent people, especially children? Or is that distinction not really valid?
No, it's a very valid distinction because it points to the fact of something not premeditated, where you would take caution and you would say, I'm going to plan a time when I execute this. It's more so a sense of this reflexive anger that takes hold of a person, where you can do something in broad daylight. Of course, there's higher consequences involved, much less chance of you getting away with such a crime. So it all points to the fact that we're experiencing these sort of less restrictions, less barriers, where folks are reacting before they're thinking. We're seeing this in young people. I see this in my practice quite a bit, where a young person will say to me, I don't know, I spoke before I even thought, or I did this, I don't even know why I did it. So one of the things that we need to be able to do, especially when we're thinking about young people and how we manage this rage and impulsive anger behavior, sometimes it's untreated ADHD that has folks sort of lash out in impulsive ways that way. Sometimes there's substance use, but all of it, the overlying message that I want to share is that all of it is treated and preventable if we can get to it beforehand. Because what we're seeing is this increase of a lack of accountability and a lack of restraint that you can bring to a place or committing this kind of crime in broad daylight.
No, absolutely. And then last thing, Dr. Mina, the in terms of the, when it's a child, when it's a child like this, you just see, I mean, I see in the neighborhood, like how it impacts the other kids, like for parents, for family members, and it may not always be a parent. It could be like a neighbor or a coach or whatever, with the kids, when they see something like this, especially if it's their neighborhood, a kid that looks like them, a kid that's, the same community or whatever, internalize that. What should we as adults be doing to help the kids cope with this? Because they don't have the same options as we do as adults.
They certainly don't. And when you're dealing with this kind of tragedy, oftentimes words will kind of fall short. What I'll recommend to patients, there's actually something from the literature and a film that captures it well, a film called Collateral Beauty. I experienced grief in my own life recently. And when I'm dealing with young people or families, to know that in moments of tragedy, there's still moments of beauty that we can extract from it. What you don't want to do is allow grief or tragedy to swallow you up, but rather to see, where can I extract hope, meaning, and even love out of these moments of difficulty and tragedy? As we see, even as a city, after 9/11, we came together as a city. After moments of difficulty and tragedy, you can find ways to lean on community. That's what the data kind of tells us. The best way to recover, the best way to move forward is to be with loved ones, have that healing presence, not so much about having the right thing to do or the right thing to say, but being present together is the most powerful way that we can heal as a community after a tragic situation like what we saw in this young person.
And no shortcut, just being there, really, right?
Absolutely. That
And,
healing presence is huge.
and being present. Dr. Mina Mirholm, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. Some excellent advice for us and great takeaways as always. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lisa.